Hi and welcome back to my channel. In today's video you have my August wrap up. Now for most people, the amount of books that I read this month, still a really good number. For me, in comparison to the past several months I should say, it's a lot less. Part of that is I went back to school, had less time to read. Part of it is towards the end of the month I discovered The Sims and played a lot of that, and didn't necessarily read as many audiobooks as I had been reading. I still read 24 books. So let's take a look at the stats before I do a check-in on the various goals. As far as stats go, like I mentioned, 24 books. As far as page numbers read, which does include the audiobook as pages, almost 10,000, 9,700, not too shabby. Average pages per day, about 316. Average page count of the books was over 400. That does play into, as well, why I didn't necessarily read as many, because several of these were quite large. So if I read them as an audiobook, it took longer to read them. If I read them physically, like one of them that I'm going to talk about, it took longer to read. My most read genre, again, no one's surprised. It's fantasy. I had a lot of really good books this month. Spoiler alert. Is that because I read more fantasy this month? Perhaps. Books with rep, 20 out of the 24. I really like seeing that number. Now, when I say books with rep, that includes a wide variety of rep. Disability rep, LGBTQ, racial, etc. And authors read from before, 15. So there were a lot of repeat authors in here. I'm not really, some of the series were series I finished, so those are authors I read from before, etc. All right, now let's get into the check-in, so you could say, portion of this, where I look at the various goals. So first goal that I set out this year was Buzzwordathon, and that book for this month was Body Parts, was the clue, I guess you could say, the buzzword. And so I read Aggie Morton Mystery Queen, The Body Under the Piano. Then we had my 23 and 23, and for that I read Opposite of Always by Jason Reynolds and Warrior Girl on Earth by Angeline Boulley. You can tell by the smile on my face, you will be seeing this book again. Then we come to the series that I started, and the book that it took me the longest to read, and that is Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I will be talking more about this in my recent reads coming in a few days. Then as far as series that I continued on in, I continued with book 2 in the Course of Dragons series, The Name of All Things. I like this one even better than The Rune of Kings. I don't know how that's possible, but I did. Then I continued in the Frostheart series with Escape from Aurora and finished it with Rise of the World Eater. So this was the series that I finished this month, different than my TBR. It's okay. Another book to check in about is my clearing my oldest books off my TBR. I'm going to be reevaluating because I didn't put any of those on my September TBR. I'm going to look at those books again and see if I actually want to read them. If I have any doubts whatsoever, I'm taking them off, because I checked out Nightingales from the library and then just went, I don't really want to read this. There weren't any audiobooks available. It had a fairly low rating, so I went, I don't feel like reading this. Never even started. Then when it comes to nonfiction, I did not pull these out ahead of time. Okay, one of the nonfiction that I read is Killers of the Flower Moon. You will be seeing this again for sure. And then the other one I do not have physically, but I need to get physically, and that is Invisible Women. All right, so there we go with the check-in portion on the goals. Now I'm going to highlight the books that I read for my BookBox subscription. You'll be seeing more about those in that specific video. And we do have a DNF, and that is Death of a Bookseller. It is my Aardvark book. I'm not waiting until the end of the year. I am canceling the subscription. But I'll talk more about that in my BookBox subscription video, my BookBox battle video. Then we have 2 for book of the month. One was the specific book of the month, and then the other was an additional one that I had an arc of. And so my specific book of the month for this month is Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann, and my extra is Lady Tan's Circle of Women. I probably will start including more book of the month books in my monthly TBR because, as you can see, I have a lot of them. Yeah, it is this shelf here. Next, we have my Caffeine and Legends book, and that is Witch King. I will not be keeping this particular edition of it because this is the Caffeine and Legends version. Illumicrate also did Witch King that has sprayed edges, so I'll be keeping that one. Then we have my comic subscription with Belle of the Ball. This is actually the last of the regular comic subscription before it went to the kids subscription. And last of the special edition versions, we have The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older. I will talk more about TBR's status in my BookBox battle, but this one's a little bit tricky because I enjoyed it, but it's also very small. All right, now we come to my special edition book boxes, BookBox books, and we start off with Fairy Loot YA, This Vicious Grace by Emily Thede, or Tide. I still don't know to this day. This is from last year. I am almost caught up and on the current year. I should start reading more of these per month. Then we have 2 Fairy Loot adult. One was an extra that I also had an arc of, and I needed to read and get my review up. The official one for this month is The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramas. And the extra one is Shanghai Immortal. Yes, this does not have the dust jacket on it, which is beautiful, but I like the naked hardcover. Next, we have my Goldsboro book, and that is Shield Maiden by Sharon Emmerichs. And we have 2 Illumicrate books. One was the one that I chose for the month, and the other was extra. Illumicrate did not do too well this month. Spoiler alert. First, we have The Sun and the Void by Gabriela Romero La Cruz. This was the official Illumicrate for the month. And then we have Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood. This was the extra. I had an audiobook of it and an arc. The last category I have are SESL books, and I actually managed to read 5 of them this month. I'm not really sure how. 3 of them I have had to return to the library. That was Flight of the Puffin, which was a middle grade book. The Quantum Weirdness of the Almost Kiss, YA book. A Lesson in Vengeance, also a YA book. Now we come to the 2 that I have here with me, and that is The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. I'm not really sure why I'm bothering to hold this up. I am covering up personal identifying information because this was an interlibrary loan. And then another middle grade book with Now You Say Yes. All right, so those are all of the books that I have read so far this month. Only one book did not fit necessarily into a category, was not on my original TBR, but it did fit into the nonfiction category, and that was Invisible Women. So I'm going to pause for just a second, less than that, for you to rearrange these in star order and also get my worst and my best of the month. Okay, so here we go. We'll start with the DNF, and that is Death of a Bookseller. Then we go to my actually lowest rated one, but it's not my worst of the month because I did expect it, and that is A Lesson in Vengeance. That was 2.5 stars. Now we move into the 3 stars. And there we have Now You Say Yes and Lies We Sing to the Sea. Now you have my 3.5 star reads, starting off with one of the SESL books that I had to return to the library, and that is The Quantum Weirdness of the Almost Kiss. Then we move into The Opposite of Always, The Curse of Saints, and The Sun and the Void. Next, we move into my 4.5 star read, starting with This Vicious Grace, Escape from Aurora, Aggie Morton, The Body Under the Piano, Witch King, Lady Tan's Circle of Women, Belle of the Ball, The Girls I've Been, The Mimicking of Known Successes. Next, we come to my 4.5 star reads, starting those off with an SESL book that I had to return to the library, and that is Flight of the Puffin. Next, we have Rise of the World Eater and Shanghai Immortal. And now we move into my 5-star reads, which is my second biggest category this month. I had to have a rating of 4.08 average for the month. And we started the month off really well with The Name of All Things. Then we have Warrior Girl Unearthed, Shield Maiden, Killers of the Flower Moon, Invisible Women, and Mask of Mirrors. And now we come to my worst and best of the month. And I chose a book that was slightly above the lowest rated of the month, which was A Lesson in Vengeance, because I expected A Lesson in Vengeance to not work for me. So that lived up to the expectations. So it's not the worst book I read in the month. Did I enjoy my experience? No. The one that I had moderate expectations for, I should say, but still hoped that it would be good, because of how gorgeous the book is, lies we sing to the sea. It failed on so many accounts. Supposed to be a Greek myth inspired retelling-ish. It's not retelling a specific myth, but it's still supposed to be set in that world. Didn't really look like that at all, except for some of the names. And then the romances were weird and kind of ridiculous. And then the plot resolution, no, the plot itself went so many different places, and then it resolved in a completely unsatisfying way. So this is my worst book of the month. And then I could not narrow it down to just one book for my best of the month, even though one is probably my highest rated so far of the year. I think in this month, I read my highest rated, not only in general, but also for fiction and for nonfiction. So we'll start with the slightly lower amazing book, and that is Killers of the Flower Moon. This is short, it packs a punch, it's worded so well, the research is impeccable. David Grann takes such care with these stories and tries in what he can do to bring justice, but yet acknowledges that him alone, he can't. And he shines such a light on this story that I think everyone needs to read this. And I would probably recommend it above the adaptation, even though that's supposed to be very good too. This is just probably one of the best nonfiction books I have ever read. Then we get to my best book of the month and the year so far. And this author, so far, cannot miss. Were a Girl Unearthed by Angeline Boulley. This features some characters that were also featured in Firekeeper's Daughter. The main character herself was a side character, an also character basically, in Firekeeper's Daughter, but she gets her own starring role in this book, and this just worked so well for me because it's talking about, again, telling the story and who deserves to tell the story. I didn't plan it, but these are both Indigenous related, although they are different tribes. This is the Osage tribe, and this deals with the Ojibwe. Perry is not necessarily the kind of girl who's driven wholeheartedly by doing well academically or sports inclined. I forget what her motivation is at the moment, but through a series of events, she gets connected with one of the other members of the tribe who runs the museum that they have, and she starts learning more about how other people have been treating their sacred objects. People, white people, historians, archaeologists, and the way that some of those white people work just gave me the ick. I felt so passionately throughout this entire book, and I think this elevates it even further because even though I loved all those more thriller scenes at the end of Firekeeper's Daughter when the events really ramp up, that's not necessarily what does it for me. It was great. But the fact that this didn't have that necessarily made it work even more. This is just a phenomenal book, and I cannot wait to read more of Angeline Boulley, but she can take her time crafting beautiful works because she can do no wrong in my eyes. So there you go. It was my August. Less, but better. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.